debt fund, equity fund, endowment plan, insurance policy, fixed deposit. There are so many investment instruments out there. It boggles my mind. And then in that confusion, you end up doing nothing. And you're just like, नहीं होगा यार, पता नहीं कहाँ डालना है. So please give us the best instruments that you think we should be putting our money into, assuming we have a 15 to 18-year timeline for that goal.
Got it. Given the fact that this is such a huge sort of decision paralysis, I'm going to do a bit of an elimination method. And I'm going to be sharing with you the rationale behind why I'm eliminating each investment vehicle. And then we'll finally get to our winner.
I know. I feel like we need to know what not to go for instead of just saying, because otherwise we'll be like, why did you eliminate the rest? So please tell us, which one should be striking off our list?
So we'll start with the most obvious one, which is crypto, right? And the reason why it's important for me to address that, given the fact that, you know, a lot of young people right now have their entire portfolios in crypto. So while your risk profile might be super adventurous, do not put your kids' education to chance, right? And crypto is extremely volatile. And your obviously your goal-based planning should not be into an instrument that you totally don't know what's going to happen. The second option that I'm going to be eliminating is property. Now I'm moving towards the traditional investment vehicles that people in India typically went for. So the reason why I'm eliminating property is because now a property is not liquid. That's the first issue, right? So let's say your kid needs to go to college next year. You liquidating that property becomes a big hassle, right? And it might not even happen in time for your kid to get to their college. But the bigger issue is that a property is not diversified. It's very hit and miss, right? So if you invest in one property and you get fantastic capital gains, good for you. But you don't know whether the specific property that you've invested in, whether or not it will manifest and give you those returns. So you want to be in a place that's more predictable as opposed to more left to chance. The next one that I'm going to be eliminating is again a bit more obvious, because people in India typically consider fixed deposits to be an investment vehicle. But we don't believe fixed deposit is an investment vehicle, simply because when you adjust it for taxes, fixed deposit just barely is able to meet inflation. Forget about beating inflation. And we've clearly established that inflation in your kids' education costs are higher than the normal 6% inflation. So a fixed deposit won't even be able to match that inflation. So you'll still be sort of losing money and you'll be getting further away from your goal rather than getting closer to it. The next one that I want to take on is insurance plans or endowment plans. Now, these plans, when they existed and when they came into the fold, they were well-intentioned in the sense that, okay, if someone is not investing at all, get the insurance and investments all done together. But we at Cashvisory are not the biggest proponents of those plans for two main reasons. One is they do come with huge amounts of lock-ins. So they take away from the flexibility that you have with that pool of money. But more importantly, they have very high charges. So on average, they will charge 3 to 4% in management fees and all the other charges that are there. So imagine investing in the same mutual funds through a ULIP versus investing it separately in the same mutual fund. Your returns would just diminish by 3 to 4% by virtue of doing that, right?
What's a ULIP?
So ULIP is basically an investment-linked policy, or an investment-linked insurance plan, where you get the investment component and the insurance component together, right? Now, in a similar vein, endowment products have similar challenges. They were very popular in India until recently because people like the capital guarantee aspect that comes with it. They know that, okay, they will be getting some pool of money for sure. But there is a bit of ignorance that comes into play here. Now, in the markets, you can't really predict the returns that you're going to be getting over a 1 year or a 2 year time horizon, right? But over an 18-year time horizon, it's much easier for you to predict at least a range of returns that you'll be getting, like somewhere between 10 to 14%, very doable if you're investing for the longer run. So you, in essence, you don't need those guarantees, is the point that people have started understanding now. So with this elimination, what I come to, or what I'm left with, are mutual funds and ETFs. We believe that these are really the best instruments that you could use. First of all, they give you a lot of flexibility. They're totally customizable depending on your own risk appetite. So if you want to go very aggressive with it, if you want to go more balanced with it or cautious with it, you can determine the mix of different funds or different ETFs that you want to hold in order to get to that objective. And at the same time, a lot of these things can be automated with your SIPs, with your step-up SIPs. And one very, very interesting thing that people don't know about these mutual funds. Everyone knows about SIPs now, right? But not a lot of people know about SWPs. which are systematic withdrawal plans. So let's say, hypothetical situation, you're investing for your kid's education for 18 years and your kid is about to go to college next year. You could actually start withdrawing that pool of money on a monthly basis rather than doing it all at once. Because this is also a very common question that we get. When should I withdraw my money? Right? Because market conditions might be a factor there. So why not remove the timing there as well and start withdrawing that on a monthly basis? And also, you will not be using that money all at once. You'd be needing that money over a 3 to 4 year period. So your SWP can keep withdrawing your money on a month-on-month basis as and when you need it. So with these sort of different factors in play, with the sort of freedom and flexibility it gives you, to us it's a no-brainer. Now, one last little, I would say, bonus tip that I would give to people, because there are certain tax saving instruments that you could consider as well. And a very popular one in India specifically, for especially if you have a daughter, is a Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, which is basically a tax saving instrument for your daughter, where you get tax benefits at the point when you put in the money as well as at the point when you withdraw the money, and you get a 8% guaranteed return on that. So with the tax savings, it does make sense for you to go for something like that. The only caveat here is that these schemes again come with a really long lock-in period, which is anywhere between 16 to 21 years, which we are not the biggest fans of. So another alternative to that is, again, going back to mutual funds, there are tax saving mutual funds as well. So you have the same benefit that you have in these schemes. You get the higher returns that you have in these mutual funds, but the lock-in period is just 3 years. So I would say, in a nutshell, mutual funds are a no-brainer, and tax-saving mutual funds are an additional hack on top of that.
Like, at the risk of sounding completely lost about this, because honestly, I think this investment space, there are thousands of mutual funds, and that is just like,
Absolutely.
if you just look at the India market, you look at the New York Stock Exchange, Singapore Stock Exchange, it just, the number just keeps on compounding.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, what are these tax saving mutual funds that parents can look at?
So there are these basically tax-saving mutual funds, which in India are called equity-linked saving schemes. Right. So it doesn't matter which one you choose. And it's become relatively easy for people to choose that now. For example, if you go into Cashvisory's platform, you will see one or two ELSS funds already selected for you. Now, as you rightly pointed out, Rini, there are over 5,000 funds in the country, in India. And if someone were to go in to start filtering out and selecting these funds, it's a freaking nightmare because you don't know what to go for. So I want to give another hack for people who want to do this themselves. Whenever in doubt, go for an index fund. An index fund is nothing but a fund that basically tracks the top 50 or the top 100 companies in India, right? So you're basically not just betting on a particular fund, but you're betting on the growth of the Indian economy as a whole, right? Which is something that all of us at this point are bullish on. So going
we're rooting for that.
We are rooting for that. So that's absolutely something that you could do. And when it comes to the tax saving ELSS funds, you could just go into a lot of these portfolio building platforms. So Cashvisory is one of them. So what happens when you go into Cashvisory or any of these sort of portfolio builders? The first thing that they'll ask you to do is do your risk profiling to understand what is the level of risk that you're able to take. And based on that, it's going to filter down and show you which funds are appropriate for you. So not just in terms of the ELSS or the tax saver funds, but also building the overall portfolio for you. Because it's not just equity funds that you need to consider. You need to look at bond funds. You need to probably look at some gold funds to build a holistic portfolio. So all of these things, the heavy lifting can be taken care of for you.
Wow. I mean, that's what we need. Like, because if you go to a typical brokerage account, whether it's DMAT for your bank or you go to your IBKR, they just list out all the funds for you. They'll be like, buy what you want. But if you go through some of these financial advisory platforms, such as Cashvisory, they do that filtering out for you. And then
Absolutely.
you can evaluate whether or not that is the right instrument for you, right?
Exactly.
Just putting some numbers out there, because you mentioned that we have been talking about numbers so far. So let's say for Cashvisory, if I were to put my money in there with that education goal in mind, what are the kind of returns that we have a long run for these the education-based financial goals?
If I were to sort of talk about the returns that have been there in the near term, I think those numbers are a bit misleading. Even our own portfolio over the last 2 to 3 years has given a return that is north of 20% on average. And I'm talking about a balanced portfolio. But if I were to level set this over a 10 to 15 year time horizon, you should level set yourself around a 12% mark. That's a pretty good sweet spot for you to work towards. If you're someone whose risk profile is, let's say, more cautious, I would say look at a 10% value. If you're someone who's more adventurous, look at a 14% value, right? So a 10 to 14% range is a very good sweet spot for you to expect in the longer term, as long as your sort of portfolio is built the right way.
So this is kind of returns that we are expecting on
Absolutely.
a year by year basis.
Yes. So,
Am I
yes,
right to say
absolutely.
that?
Annualized returns. So 10 to 14% every year.
All right. Oh my God, so much I have learned today. I think this episode, somebody needs to have a notepad out and take lots of notes and build up their homework for the next few weekends, because doing this financial planning is something that we have to do in our age group, in this 25 to 35 age bracket. Like you said, if you're planning to have kids or you already have kids, you need to know your numbers.
Absolutely.
Because when your kid is 16 and then they finally say, hey dad, I think I want to go to Australia for my university, and then you look at your numbers, you're like, wait, I can't afford that, and then you get into this whole thing of like, loans and this and that, which then you will curse yourself. Then you'll be like, oh my God, I wish I had planned for this 15 years ago when I had the time to do it.
Precisely, precisely. And banking on the time machine being invented 16 years down the line is not a good strategy, guys. So do it while you still can, right? And kind of be regret free. And we're talking about, your kids here, who we sort of love unconditionally and we'll do anything for. So this is a minimum. This is, I think, the biggest show of love that you can do for your child is by planning early for their future.
Wow, love that. I think that's exactly something that we have to keep in mind. So, Utkarsh,